Hi guys, welcome to the channel talking all things Zelda, and wow, oh wow, do I have an exciting video for you today. We have lots to look at, so a slightly longer one today, but there really is so much good stuff to talk about, and what a week it has been. I'll jump straight into the video in just a moment, but wanted to quickly say I've been working on another video to upload after the incredible support and nice comments I received on my last video. Thanks all so much for that. But with the new gameplay update dropping earlier this week, I think you'll all agree this takes priority, and we just have to look at all the great new details revealed and some exciting stuff that I don't think has been spotted yet, including an absolutely awesome hidden confirmation. So I'm going to break this video into 4 parts. Part 1 will dig a little deeper into some of the awesome new things revealed. Part 2 will break up the video a bit with some quickfire things I love about the gameplay update. Part 3 will focus on aspects I'm excited to discover more about, and part 4 is going to be that hidden confirmation from the update video. So you'll want to stick around as we run through each of these in turn, building up to some really awesome details in part 4, but I think you'll find something worthwhile in each part of the video, with details throughout that lead up to my thinking in part 4. All exciting stuff. First up, part 1 then. Let's get straight into it with all the awesome new details revealed that are just building the hype for this game even further. So we've got Zonai implementation into the game confirmed, something I know the Zelda community will be incredibly hyped about. The confirmation comes in the form of the items, similar to Guardian parts, that these new robots drop, or constructs as they are more specifically known. I hear you, what is so important about the Zonai and how they play into the wider picture? Well, this essentially confirms that Link's new arm is Zonai, as the same green magic emanates from the constructs, and subsequently that it was the Zonai, or at least the arm of the Zonai, that sealed Ganondorf away. If we look at the huge Zonai-like symbols on the surface that give serious crop circle vibes, the question that comes to my mind is whether these have been activated because the seal on Ganondorf has been broken and he has been released from his imprisonment. This has to play into the relationship with the Zonai somehow, in the same way that the Sky Islands have now appeared and these blocks are being pulled towards the surface. This may well have been a failsafe that the Zonai put in place, in the sense that their defense mechanisms would reappear if Ganondorf was ever released from the seal. The problem is, it looks like the Zonai civilization is now lost to history, and it's on Link to step up to the challenge instead. But the defense mechanisms in the form of constructs are not just found on the Sky Islands, as you can see here. As you can see, they are also found on the ground. I expect this area here, in close proximity to the Dueling Peak stable, will house one of these symbols, and the Zonai constructs are guarding whatever is hidden there. Perhaps all of these need to be reactivated to help with the fight against Ganondorf. One thing this did get me thinking, and it's fun to speculate, is why the Zonai were needed to seal away Ganondorf in the first place. Had the 7 sages failed at this once too many times? Was it a time when the hero was not around? We know this has happened before. The Wind Waker tells of a time in which the hero did not appear to save Hyrule, so the citizens instead appealed to the gods. Might the Zonai have appeared to protect the people of Hyrule in this way? If the kingdom was in a dire situation, it may have needed a tribe like the Zonai, savage magic wielders, to save it. They may have been the only option available, the lesser of 2 evils. Staying with the Zonai, we have yet more connection to Skyward Sword. The links, no pun intended, just keep on coming. The Zonai robots, or constructs, are very similar to Skyward Sword's robots, the sassy little electric robots generally appearing when you hit time shift stones in Lanayru Desert. By the way, I don't think that, just because these soldier constructs are attacking Link, that the Zonai are enemies of Hyrule. I suspect this is more of a case of automated defense to outsiders. If the Zonai are now extinct, it is likely that this is a case of nobody being around to call off their automated minions, rather than the Zonai wanting to hurt Link. And further evidence of this can be seen in the form of the Ranger construct. It is not aggressive towards Link, rather it just seems to be tending to the island's general upkeep. I could do with a Ranger construct to look after my garden, to be honest. In any case, I love the dynamic that these robots bring to combat, and the fact that they can use fused weapons. Enemies using fused weapons will spark creativity in players' minds in terms of what they will be able to integrate together, which is, of course, by design. Nintendo will not have overlooked anything on that front, and the gameplay possibilities available to players in Tears of the Kingdom will be vast. Before we move on to the next part of the video, the minimap has some form of altitude meter at the bottom of it. If you watch the numbers closely, they decrease when the horse goes downhill and increase when the horse goes uphill, and then a more rapid decrease in the figure can be seen when the Link is skydiving. This is awesome because, even more so than we already knew, this suggests there is going to be some serious verticality in the game. The numbers seem to act as latitude and longitude metrics too, so we'll track Link's coordinates on the map along the X, Y and Z axes, so both horizontally and vertically. Another thing worth mentioning that we can connect to this, as it seems they will feature heavily in Tears of the Kingdom, is that cave systems, both entrance and exit, now show on the minimap. I suspect the reason for this is because the cave systems are now going to be much more than small inlays, and our altimeter, let's call it that, will even track negative values for when we inevitably venture beneath the surface. Okay, so part 2, some quickfire things that I love from the update. First up, we've got the fact that during the rewind ability, you can stop the block moving at any time. You can see the button on screen here. Think about how much freedom this will give you. Next, we've got the equivalent of shrines coming back and will likely act as fast travel markers. You can even see them highlighted in a similar colour here on the minimap, and I'm going to dig into this a bit further later in the video in terms of what these are specifically. Third up, Beetle is back. Love him or hate him, get those beetles at the ready. Up next, food and items are now set to up on the D-pad, which is a great result. This is obviously to incorporate the new fuse ability, but I'm also hoping that we can get food out in order to cook it by using the D-pad. It was fine before, but this would be more intuitive as it removes the additional layer of jumping into a menu. Fifth, the animations when the Zonai soldiers die are so much more than just a purple cloud of malice from Breath of the Wild. The individual pieces that make up the soldier fall to the ground. Really cool. Could we see this with other enemies as well? Will this guy just crumple into a load of blocks? I think it probably will. Next, I love the fact that you get this in-game indication as to the change in your weapon power, rather than having to jump into a menu to see the exact power differences. Before, we just had an up or down arrow. My last quickfire thing that I love is the new soundtrack, as it seems like the exploration music has that same beautifully subtle tone and ambience of Breath of the Wild, and judging by the sample we got from this update, we're in for a treat. Just have a listen to how beautiful it sounds.
はい、枝が落ちてますね。こういうのはね、どんどん取っていきましょう。あときっと役に立つんで。
Part 3 then, let's get stuck into the aspects like I'm sure all of you, are eager to discover and delve a little deeper into. First up, I really want to know what this giant warp does. Could it possibly be a way of powering up the whole of a sky island and moving it around, or could it be where you recharge your Zonai energy? It almost looks like it is the centre of an arena, so I can't imagine you will be able to just walk right up to it to begin with. It is more likely that a mini-boss similar to a Hinox or a stone talus will appear once you get close. We actually now know that the golem from the previous trailer is a Zonai construct. Let's call it a golem construct to remain consistent with the apparent naming theme. So you may have to fight the golem construct in order to access the orb. Although it looks like a non-active version of the golem is stationed elsewhere, as you can see in the shot here, when the ascend ability is being demonstrated. I'm sure there will be more than one of these golems knocking around anyway. Secondly, are Koroks now merchants? It's hilarious how big this guy's bag is, by the way. A major test of balance, as a Breath of the Wild shrine would put it. Or could there be a number of these Koroks dotted around that you can speak to in order to expand your inventory and receive other upgrades? We haven't seen any footage of the Lost Woods or the Deku Tree yet, so something bad may have happened there. They are even gone from this shot when Aonuma pans the camera around in the skydiving sequence, meaning that the Koroks, including Hestu may have been forced to leave their home. Again, for me, as I touched upon in previous videos, this could be more evidence to suggest that some time has passed since Zelda falls into the abyss, and the events which we presume are near the start of the game have occurred. That, along with changes to Breath of the Wild locations, coupled with Link's general appearance and attire. At least Beedle is still around. Worth mentioning this twice, as I know you'll all be happy about that. Next up, I'm intrigued as to where these falling blocks are coming from and how often one falling from the sky occurs. Could it become more frequent as you progress through the game, adding a sense of urgency to your objectives? Possibly not in a timed way, as Tears of the Kingdom will centre around exploration and discovery at your own pace, similar to Breath of the Wild, but the urgency may instead be linked to when you choose to progress the story. And before you say it, this block has not simply come from the island we can see here. If we slow down the clip, it has clearly come from somewhere above it. This next one goes without saying, but the new abilities are top-notch features, and not only are the concepts brilliant, but the way they are implemented looks absolutely fantastic. They just look to be really intuitive. Just the fact that you can unglue and then reshape is brilliant, as it essentially means players won't be afraid to try something for fear of losing precious materials. They can just pull it apart and start again, including the realigning of items. If anyone ever played Dead Rising games, I spent hours upon hours just putting various weapons together to see what hilarious and brilliant combinations you could make, something I can see myself doing in Tears of the Kingdom. It's also worth noting that the shape of the amber is completely different to that of Breath of the Wild. When coupled with the new fuse ability, my guess is that we're going to be able to tip our weapons with the various minerals, which will of course enhance durability and strength. It will be awesome if there are different weapon designs linked to each mineral: sapphire, diamond, ruby, etc. There's also a beautiful simplicity to controlling the machines, built by using the Ultra Hand mechanic, which appear to have a finite amount of battery. I wonder if they will be powered in the same way the Master Cycle was powered up in Breath of the Wild, in that you just throw a few apples or other items in to power it up, but the simplicity comes in the form of a quick swipe to power it on and off. And you may have noticed the battery icon and the speed at which this particular vehicle runs out of power, but don't worry, there will be ways around this. Look at the battery pack being used to power Link's car in the previous trailer. I had seen people previously stating that this green orb type item was being transported somewhere in order to unlock something, but I now firmly believe this is a battery pack. It is important to make new gameplay mechanics enjoyable while at the same time being accessible to a wide audience, and it looks like the Zelda development team have really nailed that particular balance here. The penultimate detail for this part of the video is the unactivated and currently dormant green spiral rock in the background here, which tallies up with the ones on the surface from the previous trailers. Perhaps this is before it falls to the ground, but I would say that the most likely reason it is up here is because Link hasn't explored this area yet. Once he does, he will activate it somehow, most likely by approaching it, or maybe this is a function of the giant orb we touched upon earlier, in that once that this has been activated for a sky island, the spiral rock falls to the ground and acts as a quick travel mechanic, similar to how you would activate Sheikah Towers or shrines in Breath of the Wild. So, before we move on to the exciting details in part 4, remember when they showed off rail surfing in the last trailer? I thought that looked like a brilliant way to expand upon the shield surfing mechanic. The first Zelda times Tony Hawk crossover, here we go. But I wondered whether this would just be something you only did on the odd occasion. With shield surfing in Breath of the Wild, there were a few places where you could get a really good surfing run, but not loads. But just look at this, there seemed to be an abundance of possibilities for rail surfing available, here, here, and here. So expect these to be littered throughout the game world. We can also see that the Sky Islands even have the return of minecarts for when you don't want to break your valuable shields. Now, where's Hestu? I need some more shield slots in my inventory. Okay, here we go. Part 4. Some incredibly exciting stuff in this segment, and you heard it here first. I was so hyped to spot this detail, and I've now convinced myself this is definitely happening. I truly think it will be. Everything has lined up. and I'll discuss why. So we all know how important the branding and title art is in Zelda games. It always subtly references key elements of the game. Well, check out this. And it was actually revealed after the main gameplay segment, but we got a more detailed look at the key art without the wording in the way to obscure the full majesty of it. And no, it's not the Triforce, the incorporation of which in Tears of the Kingdom was essentially a given at this point in some form or another, but instead it's what's underneath. They're coming back. It is no coincidence whatsoever that Skyward Sword was the last Zelda game released on the Switch. Loftwings are back. And how do we know this? Well, a few reasons. This image is integral to Tears of the Kingdom. It's absolutely everywhere. On the OLED model, Pro Controller, official case, and this is the image that features on the Hylian shield, the Hylian crest, which originated from the giant birds that were ridden by the citizens of Skyloft. I expect that we'll have to unlock the Loftwing at some point in the game, only when Link is deemed to be worthy, rather than it just being available at the start, and until that moment we'll be tinkering around with building things and rewinding tier blocks. Additionally, look at Link's skydiving animation. It is exactly the same as the one from Skyward Sword, before he whistles to call his red Loftwing. And then we all know that the Tears of the Kingdom director, Hidemaru Fujibayashi's first game he directed was Skyward Sword. Tears of the Kingdom could effectively wrap up the end of the trilogy for him. It would therefore be fitting to tie the events in this game all back to Skyward Sword, something I strongly believe will happen in more ways than one and at various points throughout the game. I, for one, would love to jump from my Loftwing, skydive down and then flip into arrow time to take out an airborne enemy before whistling to call my Loftwing again. The Zelda team have said that they want to create as many ways as possible to explore this world, and this would be yet another avenue available to players to do so. And yes, you can say that the Hylian shield appears in most Zelda games, which it does, but it is its prominence here in particular and how heavily it is being featured in all the key artwork and branding. And then if we look at the Triforce, and another huge significance of the implementation of the altitude meter mentioned earlier will be where the Triforce is located. Up in Skyloft and near the Temple of the Goddess would be my guess. Perhaps we will even visit Skykeep again in order to retrieve it. Are the tier blocks coming from Skyloft? Is Link communicating with Hylia in her goddess temple or somewhere within the sacred realm? Will we ultimately be working our way up to Skyloft in this game to get the power to defeat Ganondorf? And will we be working our way through dungeons to get the necessary tools in order to reach higher and higher into the sky to ultimately get to Skyloft? Will Skyloft be as high up as 9999 on the minimap reading? All amazing questions that I'm excited to find the answers to. One last thought to leave you with is that the Zonai could be descendants of the Skyloft citizens who became familiar with magic over time, and a race that predominantly resided on islands in the sky. They have put numerous defences in place to protect against Ganondorf or demise, and they didn't appear in Breath of the Wild other than by virtue of the existence of a few ruins because the seal was still in place, and they have likely also been lost to time, with the only remnants of their civilization being the constructs. But if you also look at the silver markings at the top of the Hylian shield, these look Zonai in nature and comparatively similar in style to the way that the green Zonai energy flows. Just something to think about, and perhaps more evidence of the Zelda team connecting all the dots. Wrapping up then, so many new details to be excited about, and we haven't even scratched the surface yet, much like in the Kingdom of Hyrule. There is lots more to discover. For example, what is this purple cloud near the Dueling Peaks stable? I am beyond hyped for this game, and we're so close to release date now. I'm working on lots of new stuff, including further looks at this gameplay update, so please do help me out and get those notifications on for new uploads. I want this channel to be as interactive as possible, so comment down below to let me know if you agree with anything discussed today. Please also help me out and subscribe, and I'll throw some more awesome content your way soon on all things Zelda. Thanks, have a good one, and catch you next time.